Right off the bat. What's going on, everyone? Hope you all are having a great start to your week. Hope you all had a great weekend. It's such a pleasure to be here. And welcome to another edition of Bunker Office Hours, our weekly live show brought to you by the team at Bunker Labs, a national network of veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs dedicated to helping the military connected community start their own business. We know that 25% of transitioning service members want to start a business, and y'all need places inside your community where you can connect with the people, resources, and support you need. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues, Liz Marion and Amy Mortson. What's going on, Liz and Amy?
Howdy.
Hey, how's it going?
So I figured let's go ahead and kick things off, Amy, and tell everybody what's going on in the Bunker Lab network over the next coming weeks.
Sure. This week, as we wrap up June, we're wrapping up our hail and farewells. So saying goodbye to our previous veterans and residents cohort and hello to our new veterans and residents cohort. So we've got many in-person events across the country this week. The four I'm going to highlight today. We've got one in Raleigh-Durham this evening, 5:30 Eastern. We've got one tomorrow. No, we've got three tomorrow. Sorry. In Houston, Nashville, and Tampa. So check out chapters.bunkerlabs.org for exact dates and times, RSVP, and join us in person to welcome the new cohort and celebrate the previous cohort.
Awesome. Make sure y'all are taking advantage of these events. I know sometimes, especially if you're following us on the newsletter, there's a lot of stuff coming at you. But we're doing our best here within the ecosystem to create the events and put together the resources that we think you all need. So a lot of these events and stuff that we're putting on, right, this is from feedback we're getting from the community based on the surveys and then from those in our programs. So, I know it can be overwhelming at times. You're probably wondering, oh, what do I need to go to? Well, if it's something in your local community, highly encourage that, especially with stuff open up, people feeling isolated. Now's the time to kind of get back in person and take advantage of that, and then look for stuff that's like industry specific too. So if you're like a CPG company, anytime we come out with something, best speaker from another brand or something, make sure y'all check that out. All right. If you have any questions about events or anything while we're on this live show, just go ahead and drop your questions in the chat. So one of the reasons we're jumping on today to set the tone for this one is some quarterly planning. As of right now, what is it? It's June 29th. So we're wrapping up Q2 and getting ready to head into, Q3. And this is something I will tell you, and as an early stage entrepreneur, I'm still relatively early stage, but like it was a game changer once I learned how to do like quarterly planning. Some people may or may not have a business background. All of us don't necessarily go to business school and kind of have that MBA. And so understanding just kind of how to think in quarters, right? I never really knew that ahead of time. And so once I ended up getting a business coach by the name of Bill Watkins and learned quarterly planning from him. And it was just such a game changer for me. And it's something I've seen be really successful with a lot of people. And some of you all, even though you might feel like you're in the early stages, you still have your full-time job, you got your side hustle going on. This is how we get intentional about bringing our visions to life for our ventures. Because we can all have the best business plan in the world. You can do all that kind of stuff. You can go to all the meetups, right? But it's like, how are you approaching your business, right? Like, how are you moving this venture forward? And what I found to be super successful is sitting down and making a quarterly plan. So if you're tuning in right now and you're like, oh, I don't really know what I should be doing, or I'm feeling kind of lost, or you're feeling stuck in your venture, like this is the office hour session for you, because we're going to go through quarterly planning. And again, I got my colleagues here, Amy and Liz, to help talk about it. All right. So Liz, what are your thoughts on quarterly planning?
Well, if anybody knows me and they know that I live by goals and vision and my calendar too, right? And I think for quarterly planning, honestly, it's really setting aside bite-sized chunks that you can accomplish in your business, right, in a quarter. So you're not having, while you might have 1, 2, 3, 5-year goals, you're not having to bite off more than you can chew in a quarter. It's making those goals attainable, those long-term goals attainable.
Now, Liz, in your first company, you had like this apparel company, correct? Mm-hmm. Right? Did you take the time to do quarterly planning then? And if so, what did it look like for you?
That's a throwback, Mike. That's I'm so surprised that you know that.
I put her on the spot, y'all.
That's okay. Yeah. We had like if you can believe it, like a biometric sensor clothing company that we were putting biometric sensors in clothing. And yeah, we definitely did quarterly planning, because one of the most important things that I didn't know that you learn about apparel is manufacturing. So manufacturing is, when you're making 20 of something versus 20,000 of something, it's way different. So what are those prototyping goals? That was built into our quarterly planning a lot, was when prototypes were going to be ready and when they were going to be able to put on athletes, for instance. So quarterly planning, and especially the clothing business, when you're working with a supply chain and you're working with manufacturing, is super important, because otherwise, if you don't have those deadlines, you don't communicate those to your vendors, it's not going to happen.
Yep. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume, okay, you all even know what quarterly planning is, right? I was a grunt, so sometimes I got to break it down, all right? So each year there's 4 quarters, right? They last 90 days each. So January to March, then March to like June, July to what? September, and then October to December. I could be wrong, y'all. I told y'all I'm a grunt, so don't beat me up.
I think
All right,
that's right.
Yeah.
But essentially what you do is you're moving your venture forward through 90-day increments, right? And there's a book out there called the 12 week year, where you just kind of attack the year in 12-week sprints, all right? But essentially what you're going to do is you've got this grand vision for your business, for your venture, right? You've done the pitch competitions, you've done all that kind of stuff, right? But now it's like, okay, how do we break this down and how do we move ourselves forward, all right? And so you do that by attacking it on a quarter by quarter basis, okay? Now, I'm going to assume, we're going to sprint past this, but you've all taken the time to like set your vision. And the vision is beyond just like where I want to be a year from now, 5 years from now, etc. But we need to have our core values, our core purpose, our bold beliefs, why we exist. And if you don't have that stuff yet, that's going to be for another conversation. All right. But I want you to encourage you, even if you got to sit down and do a sprint, go through a sprint of who you are as a brand, why you exist, what's your purpose, get all that stuff down. Right. Once you have that, okay, now it's like, okay, now how do we actually go ahead and move forward? And the first thing we're going to start is with that sprint. All right, those 90 days, that quarterly plan. Now, here's where I've seen people mess this up. And Amy, Liz, let me know y'all's feedback. So you sit down, right? You're in your little VIR at the WeWork or whatever, and you're sitting there and you're getting ready to plan your next 90 days. And you treat your quarterly plan like a to-do list, right? So you list out like 10 different things that you want to have accomplished by the end of the quarter. And then, you start to look back and you're overwhelmed because you realize it's just you, even though you have on your website, everybody knows it goes straight to your email inbox. All right. So how actually are you going to accomplish like all this stuff that you have listed out? Right. And the reality of it is you can't accomplish 10 different things. Right. All the literature out there, from 4 disciplines of execution to traction to some of this other stuff. Right. 12-week year. They all recommend planning like at most 3. So 3 things that you want to accomplish, within the quarter. And these are like goals that are like going to get the best ROI, the best return of investment, right? So you're going to have those 3 goals. My recommendation, this is the Mike Stedman recommendation. If you are early stage, you need like 2, and definitely one of those goals needs to be tied to revenue, right? Because I've done a lot of incubators. I've done 7, 8 incubators, right? And one of the things that hems so many people up in terms of moving forward with their venture is not generating revenue. So if you're not prioritizing revenue generating activities in your business, right, and you don't make this clear to yourself and any external team members, right, then you're not going to move forward. All right. So I want to hear y'all's feedback on that.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. I think, and now that I'm thinking about my clothing company again, my athletic wear, is, going back to that is like quarterly goals. I think the suggestion of 2 or 3 is absolutely right on. When you first start that first year, if you're focusing, for me, it was like focusing on more than one thing every quarter. Was like, I had like one quarterly goal. It was like, get prototype A made very crudely and sewn together. It's like, and then the next prototypes and those sorts of things, or like source sustainable fabric was like one quarterly goal, like find vendors, have those conversations. And I think you're right on. And I think as you move, like Mike, like how many quarterly goals do you have now? Like every quarter?
Like 2 or 3.
And they're like pretty significant and big, and they're tied to revenue.
They are.
Yeah.
you know? So like, I'll give you an example. All right. When I was team struggle bus, and to be honest, I'm probably still team struggle bus right now a little bit. But when I wasn't prioritizing revenue, my quarterly plans were like, I don't know, like just dumb stuff. I don't know, like aspirational, like, oh, I want to generate 250K by the end of the quarter. It's like, Mike, come on, man. You haven't even, there's like stuff that needs to happen beforehand,
Yeah.
you know? And so it might just be like quarterly plan, onboard 3 beta customers at a 5K price point or something, right? That's actionable. Boom, I go in. That's a quarter. You're starting out 15K right off the bat, right? That's like a good plan or something, all right? And so, but I had to learn that, right? For the first like year when I was doing quarterly planning, I was missing stuff 100%. You know, I would have these aspirational goals, and they're good goals because at the end of the day, you do want to kind of 10x it, right? Because if you go too low, you know, you're leaving stuff on the table, right? So if you say, I only want to get 1 beta customer, and you get that first beta customer within a week, right? Now you've got this whole quarter, you know what I'm saying? Versus saying, hey, I want to get 10 beta customers, and you get 7, right? You didn't get 10, but you got 7, which is a lot more than 1. All right. But I had to learn that. I had to learn how to like know like what was realistic within planning. So let's go back to that. Okay. So your quarterly goals, right? My recommendation, again, have at least one tied to revenue if you're early stage, and then maybe have your other 2 tied to either team, right? Or some kind of operational thing that'll make you more efficient, right? Because we know at the end of the day, like, you know, it's a Wizard of Oz running a venture. You're behind the scenes, you're pulling this, you're pulling that, you're doing all this kind of stuff, man. And at the end of the day, you know, you can't do everything alone. So that's why I'm like, either it's team or operations official. Again, that's just my plug if this is your first time going through this. All right. The next thing you need to do. So you're going to set your goals, right? Identify those goals, put them on paper, make sure you know, make sure your team know, and then that's your North Star for the next 90 days. The next thing that you need to do is, and this comes from Sean Covey's book, The 4 Disciplines Execution, you need to set your lead measures. All right. And what do we mean by lead measures? I'll give you an example. So let's say, okay, I'm sitting down and I'm like, all right, Mike, I want to, I don't know, generate 20 new leads, you know, for my ventures, right? Even still, that can be overwhelming, right? So then I look at that and say, okay, rather than being overwhelming, like, how do I drive that outcome, right? It's all nice and dandy to have on paper that I want to go from, you know, a sales funnel of 5 to 20, you know, 20 warm prospects, right? What are the things that I actually have control over, or you actually have control over, right? 20 is a result of activities that we're doing that leads to that. So one of the things you want to do is you're going to break it down to lead measure. Okay, so how do I get 20 new leads? Well, maybe the first thing I need to do is publish 15 blog posts. You get what I'm saying? So then you write down, okay, I'm going to publish 15 blog posts. Next, I'm going to go to 5 industry specific networking events or something, right? And then you have another thing, and maybe you go on, I don't know, 10 different podcasts in your industry. All right. So then you put that stuff down on paper. And then over the next 90 days, it's like, okay, you know, it's the first week, and you're like, all right, I gotta get a blog post out. I'm doing 15 this quarter, so maybe I drop 2, you know, and I tag people, right? And then you start doing these activities, and the goal is by the end of that you drive the desired outcome. Because even for us, we've worked at different organizations, right? Maybe you work different organizations. How many times have y'all gone to like a planning meeting and everybody throws all this stuff up on the wall, and it's like, but like, how, Sway? Like, how are we gonna accomplish this? Like, how is this actually getting done?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the things that you said that I want to kind of call out is like if you have a team, share it with your team. Share like your goals for the quarter with your team. Like always, unless you're a solopreneur, but even then, get like a mentor or something and look at them, because I think sometimes that shiny object syndrome like is gonna like kill you if you're chasing the wrong thing. Like you're focused on like vanity metrics on social media when you should be like, you know, I don't know, fixing your operations. It's an issue.
Yeah, maybe your team is, you know, it's your VIR group if you're in veterans and residents, or it's a mastermind that you joined, or even, I mean, I find like if you're on social media and you're part of a group, you know, like Create and Cultivate or something like that, put that out there, put that goal out there in that group, get those comments, have accountability to that group that you're going to achieve those goals. Mike, something else you said was, you know, it's kind of like how I always reverse engineer goals or quarterly planning, right? Which is like, what is the deliverable and then what is everything that you have to do to get there.
Right. Break it down in actionable steps. And
Yeah.
sometimes you can do it week over week. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, you kind of like lay out that roadmap, because 15 blog posts can be overwhelming. Like, how the heck I ain't even got time to, you know, invoice my clients. Now you want me to write blog posts? And it's like, well, if I break that down week over week, you know, over 12 weeks, and I can assign that out to somebody else, maybe I hire a copywriter, et cetera, then you start to be able to attack that goal. Now,
Exactly.
somebody tuning in asked, any advice on where to find a business mentor? Okay. One of the things that you can do is, and you can Google this, look up how to form an advisory board, right? And the way this works is, like me, I'm in podcast, I'm in audio production. So naturally, when I reach out to potential advisors, right, who am I looking for? I'm looking for people that are in the podcast space that have some form of like marketing or a business development experience, have built some kind of company like this, right, or something similar, and can give me actionable advice on how to succeed in this industry, right? And you can do this as simple as looking up on LinkedIn, you know, and I think sometimes too, people think for this stuff, right? Like you've got to go and get like I do podcasting, right? So everybody's like, well, you should get Don Katz, you know, the CEO of Audible, you know, as your advisor. Well, realistically, like that would be nice. That's a nice to have, but does he have the bandwidth or whatever? But I'll tell you, there are other people. There's people locally. There are people within the veteran space that love to kind of help people. They just remember there's just this exchange of value, though. So when you're looking out for a mentor, you know, even this advisor, right, they're learning just as much from you as you are from them. So you can't be selfish with it and just be like, hey, can you mentor me? You know, I would love to jump on a call, blah, blah, blah. People are busy. It's just like build a relationship with people and then invite them into your company with the intent of, you know, humbly, you value them and you value their experience and you will love, you know, some help with your own venture. So that's my advice. And then quickly, we got another question. Do you all recommend any particular sales methodology? Any subject lines you use that are particularly effective? Let me get back to you on that, because right now we're focused really on this quarterly, but I'll answer that at the end. All right. So we talked about setting your quarterly goals, right? So you pick two or three at most. If you're early stage, I recommend 2. Next, you set those lead measures. And even on the lead measures, right, keep those simple, you know, 2 to 3 for each goal, right? These are 2 to 3 things that I'm gonna be focused on. And then the last thing is like, how are we actually measuring this? How are we like tracking this? And sometimes, you know, it's like there's some people that are out there that are like very, very analytical. That is not me. You know, Liz is very analytical. She loves the spreadsheets. I mean, she can crank out a spreadsheet. She's da 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 da. But if you're like me and that's not you, it really comes down to a simple question of like, what's working and what's not working, you know?
Yeah. And Paul actually made a great comment on the chat, Mike, about like tracking the percentage of goals that you're reaching. And one of the things about that is like, you know, what are your thoughts on, and we talked about this actually within Bunker, right? But like, if you're not reaching the goals quarter over quarter, you're picking the wrong quarterly goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So what does that mean for your business, and how can you kind of recalibrate that?
So one thing I am going to challenge you on, Liz, is that you're right. Like you can set a quarterly goal, right, and not hit it. But the thing is, sometimes you have to give it a chance to get some legs, you know, because I know we're in this like instant gratification world where stuff just kind of happens overnight. Like we're doing this live show now, right? We've only been doing it, 1 quarter, right? So we're still, you know, measuring and seeing how it is, right? But it's foolish to come out with something and think you're just going to grab this audience right away. You know, it takes time to build an audience, just like it takes time to build a business and anything else. So part of this process is, which is I go back to the what's working or what's not working. At the end of the day, this is all a test. This is all a hypothesis, right? We believe that if we do X, Y, and Z, it will lead to this result, right? And the way we're tracking it, right, every 90 days, we're looking and we're seeing, where are we at with relative to our goals? If we're way off, right, then maybe that comes to a decision point with you or your team, and you say, okay, we've been doing this the last 90 days, haven't really got the desired results. Now we got a decision point. Do we lean into it a little more, give it another 90 days, or do we pivot to something else, right? And the reason I want to challenge you to at least give it, you know, 6 months, right, sometimes even to a year, is because one of the reasons people get stuck is because they're constantly bouncing around. They're constantly chasing this new ball or this new project or whatever, saying we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. Man, you got to come up with a plan, and then you got to execute it with like ridiculous discipline. You understand? And listen, I'm talking to myself. This is my pep up talk to me. but put that plan down on paper and really, really lean into it and at least give it a chance. Because again, we've seen the VIRs, right? We've seen people in the other incubator programs with us. It's like every time they have a meeting, they have a new plan instead of like, hey, where are we at with the existing plan that we mapped out, I don't know, 4 weeks ago. And I'm guilty of that. I feel like my advisor comes in and he's telling me the same stuff over and over. And I'm always like, no, man, get it down on paper and give it a chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm a big fan of Jim Collins, y'all. He's got the books Good to Great and Great by Choice and all these other books. And one of the terms he uses is fire bullets than cannonballs, right? And this can work within marketing. This can work with sales. It can just work in your venture, right? Even just validating a business model. So there you are. You got all these ideas, right? And you're trying a bunch of different stuff. Boom, boom, boom. You're writing blog posts. You're doing a podcast. You're going to meetups. You know what I'm saying? You're finding channel partners. You're doing all this stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like, yo, that channel partner is really working. Every time I work with a channel partner, I get like 5 new leads. So at that point, you're like, damn, I need to go ahead and fire a cannonball. You fire that cannonball, and maybe for the next quarter, you're just focused on recruiting 3 different channel partners in your industry. Boom. And now you're filling your sales funnel. Things are rolling, right? And then you like pour gasoline on it, and then you just keep moving, right? So again, this is all like a test, right? We're talking here, right? But I'm telling y'all, if you are a early stage entrepreneur, right, of a small business or a startup, and if you're not doing this stuff, right, this is a game changer for you and your team, right? Like, again, this is real strategic planning. This is beyond just the textbook stuff. And what we've laid out here isn't like overly complicated. All we're saying is that it's like, hey, get 3 realistic things that you want to go after and get it down on paper, right? And then from there, you get the 3 things down. You create the actionable steps that are going to drive the desired outcome. Those are our lead measures. And then you track it in whichever way works for you and your team. Some people might like the color coding, like green, we're close, red, we're way off, yellow, we're kind of in the mix. Other people might like an actual number, like a scoreboard or some sort, but whatever works for you. Like for me, right, I'm just like what's working and what's not working, and like as I start to grow and scale up, you know what I mean? Like I'm probably going to need, because your team can't see in your brain. They can't see in your head, so I got to get out of that. But at least in the very beginning, man, it's real easy to tell. If here's another thing, social media, right? What do people do, Liz? They start their company pages on Facebook and all these other platforms, and they're blasting away, and they still don't have any revenue. Why is that, right? One is probably don't know who their perfect customer is, so they're not spending time on the right platforms. And the other thing is it's just not working. So you're focusing your efforts on blasting people on social media, trying to promote your brand, and you're not even doing it. It's not working. So no, that's where it comes down to is like you got to be able to like be realistic. And you know how stuff is working, honestly, in the early stages, if you're making money. That's an easy measure of the stuff you're doing. If revenue is rolling in, right, you're getting warm leads, people calling you, reaching out, then something you're doing is probably working, right? But if we're not talking about revenue, right, and especially in the early stage to achieve liftoff and get past gravity, then you're focused on the wrong activities.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, one of the things is that if you don't have somebody that will pay you for your services, even if you're testing and have, even if you have a hypothesis and you're testing your idea or the form of service or product, prototypes, then, I mean, that tells you something too. And I think one of the things is just focusing on getting those commitments that will turn into revenue is what everything should be tied to. Even in early stage business, and we all know, sales, Mike, is scary for everyone. I think, people are scared to say, will you buy my XYZ, widget or whatever it is. But that's the proof. That's the proof of concept, right? That's like how you know what to continue focusing on and follow on goals.
Yeah, and in Stephen Covey and Sean Covey's books for this execution, he even gives you a format of how to do it. He's like from X to Y by date. So going back to what Liz said, right? Like if you're just starting out and you don't have any paid clients, you haven't validated the business model. right? It's not nobody unless somebody's exchanging value monetarily, you haven't validated the business model. Even for a nonprofit, if you don't have a donation coming through the books, right? Maybe you don't have something people find that's valuable, right? And it's your responsibility to go out and test that. So that's how we track it: is that donation, is that revenue, and it lets us know that we're working on the right things. But one of the things that Sean Covey talks about is a simple format from X to Y by date, right? So I want to go from 0 to 5 beta customers by July, by the end of Q3 or something like that, right? And then you just track it by the end of the quarter. If you ain't got no beta customers, you ain't paid clients, there's something there, right? Maybe you say, I want to go from 5 blog posts this quarter to 25 blog posts by whatever, right? And you start looking at that and you're like, man, we did 25 blog posts this quarter. We got quite a bit of warm prospects. We did decent revenue. So now you're able to kind of look at that and focus on the things that work. All right. So as we're getting ready to wrap up here, one of the things we're going to do while you guys post your questions in the chat is talk about books, right? And what book recommendations do we have for this stuff? Liz, you got any book recommendations for us on quarterly planning?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be cliche here, and because I love this book, Traction, Get a Grip on Your Business by Gino Wickman. I mean, it's such a great book. Something else, another book that I'll throw out there too is somebody that I absolutely love to follow. I love all of his books. Is Daniel Pink. To Sell is Human is an absolutely great book. It also helps you set goals for sales in early stage business. And then his other book, Drive, is amazing. And, and he talks about how to bring people in to your company, sell your company, get them believing in it. This goes back to talking to your team too.
My recommendations, I'm going to piggyback off of Liz. Definitely a big fan of Traction. If you haven't checked that out, right? Very basic, simple business management, right? This is how you get out of I don't know what I'm doing, to now you're starting to build systems. And in Traction, they talk about rocks, right? Your quarterly rocks. So imagine you put 3 big rocks in a jar, right? And then you pour sand on top of it. And at the end of the day, those 3 big rocks are still the thing that's that's biggest in the jar, right? These are the focus. Too often, people focus on the sand. It's like they're focused on all these little things instead of the 3 big things that are going to move their business forward the most. So I like that one. You've got 4 Disciplines of Execution by Sean Covey. And then you also have another book, The 12-Week Year, which I think is really good. And then Jake just posted in the chat, Atomic Habits. So there's a lot of books out there. At the end of the day, right, keep it simple, whatever floats your flavor. I'm a nerd, so I read all this stuff. I can't help myself.
Yeah, I don't know how you read so many books.
It's simple. I read 20 minutes a day, and I try to stay off my phone. People are like this on their phone all day, right? I'll just stand and I try to read some. So, but again, I'm not perfect. Just trying to help out the community, and I got stuff I got to work on in my ventures as well. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Paul Abrams recommends that book as well. And we also have a blog post. I wrote a blog post yesterday. It's up. It's posted in the chat, which really just recaps what we talked about today about how to set those quarterly goals. So as we close out here, one thing we got to do is, and again, drop your questions in the chat, but we have to go ahead and acknowledge some good stuff, man. We've got a new online course in partnership with USAA. Bunker Labs has launched a course called Finances for Military Founders and Families, presented by the industry thought leader Lacey Langford of the military money expert. This new course is found on Bunker Online at bunkerlabs.org/USA TAC course. Covers everything from the basics like budgeting to building a portable business that moves with your PCS. And the course takes about 45 minutes to complete. So some great tools for entrepreneurs. There's a toolkit to prepare you to launch or move your business forward and focus on how to manage your finances for business and life. I'd also like us to acknowledge our sponsors for Bunker Office Hours, as well as the Transition Podcast, MetLife Foundation, and the Gannett Foundation. The MetLife Foundation is committed to supporting veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs. In addition, the foundation also provides mentorship and financial health resources to veterans and military spouses transitioning into the workforce. A Community Thrives, a program funded by the Gannett Foundation and part of the USA Today network, invest in community building initiatives across the country with the goal of creating a positive change through service to historically marginalized or under-resourced groups. And for everyone that's tuning in, I also want you to encourage you, if you like this kind of content, be sure to check out my podcast, The Transition, where we demystify the entrepreneur experience for veterans and military spouses of early stage startups and small businesses. I already have an episode out on quarterly planning. I think it's episode 11, but I'm going to do another solo episode to attack this, after some more experience, and I'll get that out for you all. And we're actually transitioning the podcast to a weekly drop. So every Thursday, you'll get a new podcast episode rotating between, deep dives on like specific content. I call those office hours on the show, as well as interviews with whether other entrepreneurs or SMEs within the ecosystem. So we're putting out a lot of content, y'all, to help support, right? And so we're here to support. If you have questions, you're feeling stuck, come to office hours. If you're on the move and on the go, listen to the podcast, man. Check the event. If you're, get in front of people. So we've got a lot of stuff going on, and we're excited to be able to support you all. And so just make sure you tune in office hours, rate and review the podcast for us, leave a review, and we'll see you next week on the next session of Bunker Office Hours. Peace, love, and have a great rest of your week, everyone.
Have a good week, everybody.